Come on in, have a seat, make yourself comfortable. Look, I completely understand that getting a message to come into HR can feel a little daunting, right? But take a breath. I really want to set a calm, supportive tone for us today. I've actually put together a brief explainer for situations exactly like this. It's called Navigating Wage Garnishments, a confidential guide to your pay. We're going to just walk through this step by step, entirely confidentially. My whole goal here is to make absolutely sure you understand what's happening with your pay and exactly how we're going to handle it to support you.
So let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat, okay? Getting a legal notice about your pay is stressful. Absolutely stressful. So we need to answer the main question that's probably spinning in your head right now. What exactly happens when the government or a court legally orders us, your employer, to just deduct money directly from your paycheck? It's a heavy question, but today I'm going to give you a clear, straight-up answer so you know exactly what you expect from here on out. No surprises.
No, my policy right now is incredibly simple. Please come in and close the door. And I mean that literally. This right here, this is a safe space. We're having a private, one-on-one conversation behind closed doors. Whatever we discuss today about your financial situation or this legal order, it stays strictly between you, me, and our payroll department. Period. We are really just here to act as a neutral party. We're just processing a legal requirement. We are definitely not here to judge you or make your life any more complicated.
Okay, so let's dive in. And I want to start by taking the pressure off what is usually the absolute biggest fear in these situations. Hear me clearly on this. Your job is secure. Let me just say that one more time so it really sinks in. Your job is safe. In pretty much all jurisdictions, the law completely protects you from being let go just because a legal order against your wages was served to us. For us, this is literally just a payroll administrative task. It does not negatively impact your employment status here at all.
Now, you're going to hear the term garnishment thrown around a lot, and honestly, it sounds super intimidating. But let's demystify that word right now. A garnishment is really just a broad legal term. All it refers to is any amount of money owed to a third-party creditor, think a government agency, a family court, maybe small claims court, that we are legally required to withhold from your income. That's the whole shebang. It's a standard legal procedure, basically just a piece of paperwork that we just have to process on our end. To see how this actually hits your paycheck, we kind of need to look at how the payroll math works. It revolves around what's called the payroll priority list. When we calculate your pay, the law actually forces us to take deductions in a very specific, strict order. At the very top, statutory deductions. That's the stuff everybody pays, like income tax, CPP, and EI. But right underneath those, sitting at priority number 2, are authorized deductions, and that is exactly where legal orders and garnishments live. Only after those do we process company compulsory stuff, like your pension, and finally, voluntary deductions sit way down at the bottom. So legal orders, they sit right near the very top of the list.
And you know, there's a really clear contrast between the types of deductions we handle here. On one hand, you've got voluntary deductions. Think of your United Way charity contributions or maybe the office social club. For those things, we absolutely need your written consent to take a single dime. But on the other hand, we have authorized deductions, which includes these legal orders. The defining feature here is that they are mandatory. Because they're authorized by a government or a court, the law explicitly says that no employee consent is required for us to withhold them. We simply don't have the option to ask for your permission. Which brings me to why we really don't have a choice in the matter. The compliance guidelines are crystal clear. They explicitly state, an employer who fails to comply with the order is liable for the amount owing. Basically, if we were to just decide to ignore this order to help you out, the company itself suddenly becomes legally responsible for paying your debt. It would expose the whole organization to massive liability, fines, and penalties. So please understand, it's really not that we don't want to help you out, it's that the law strictly binds our hands. We absolutely have to comply. No way around it. So who's actually issuing these orders? Let's break down the usual suspects so you know exactly who is asking for the money and why we have to answer to them. If it's the Canada Revenue Agency or Revenue Quebec, it's called a requirement to pay. That's usually for unpaid taxes. If it's coming from Service Canada, it's known as a third-party demand, usually for overpaid EI benefits. Provincial courts handle family support orders for things like child support. And finally, small claims court can issue a straight-up garnishment order if a creditor wins a judgment against you. Basically, we have to answer to whichever one of these bodies sent us the paperwork. Oh, and just as a quick side note, you might be wondering, what happens if multiple orders come in all at once?
It's like a giant puzzle, and the rules get pretty complex. We often end up having to consult with the issuing authorities or our legal counsel. But generally speaking, a Canada Revenue Agency requirement to pay is going to jump right to the very front of the line. It almost always takes top priority over the other creditors. All right, let's open up the HR playbook for a second so you can see exactly how this works day to day. Here are the exact steps of our confidential process. First, we formally log the legal order. Second, which is exactly what we're doing right now, we notify you privately, zero pressure. Third, and this is absolutely crucial, we calculate legal exemptions. We do this to protect a portion of your income. And finally, step 4, we cut a check and remit those funds directly to the court or agency. As you can see, we're really just a neutral middleman facilitating the math.
And speaking of that math, the really crucial point here is this number, 30%. Because I know a huge worry is that a garnishment is going to completely wipe out your paycheck and leave you with literally zero to live on. Thankfully, the law protects you there. For example, with a standard CRA requirement to pay, they typically only garnish up to 30% of your net wages. Now, a quick heads up, if your employment is ever terminated, the agency often demands up to 100% of your final termination pay. But for regular, ongoing payroll, you're almost always going to retain the majority of your take-home pay. However, we do have to face a bit of a mathematical reality here. If your standard net pay, after those regular statutory taxes come off, just isn't enough to cover the required garnishment amount, well, something has to give. And going back to that priority list we looked at earlier, voluntary deductions must be suspended first. This means if you've got an optional life insurance premium or maybe a regular donation to a charity coming off your check, we'll actually have to pause those just to make sure the mandatory legal order is covered. But don't worry, we'll always check in and confirm with you which ones to suspend.
As we wrap up the actual mechanics of all this, I really want to reiterate our absolute privacy promise to you. We keep all garnishment records in a completely separate file from your regular personnel records. We are never, ever going to discuss this with your manager or your coworkers. If an external debt collector or a lawyer calls us trying to snoop, we immediately redirect them to the court. We share zero details. But I do need you to note one extremely important legal rule. Even if you call the agency today and reach a verbal settlement to pay them directly, we are legally required to keep doing these deductions until we receive a formal written notice of termination from the agency. We literally can't stop just on your word. We have to wait for that official written notice.
So this brings us to a really important question for you to mull over. While we are absolutely here to manage the payroll mechanics of this confidentially, smoothly, and correctly, what steps will you take with the issuing agency to resolve the root balance? Remember, we are just the middleman following a strict legal directive. Resolving the actual debt at its source, that's ultimately in your hands. I highly encourage you to contact the agency listed on your paperwork directly to discuss your overall balance and whatever options you might have. We're here to support you on the payroll side for sure, but the path to clearing this whole thing entirely, well, that starts with them.